All right, hi everybody. We'll get started. This is the client choice workshop. So your facilitators today are going to be myself. My name is Jessica Welshins. I am the agency services coordinator here in Latham at the Regional Food Bank. We will also have Alex Lamberton, our nutrition resource manager, speaking today. So thank you everybody for joining. Here's a look at today's agenda for the workshop. As most of you know, the Regional Food Bank is a member of the National Network of Food Banks called Feeding America. So our workshop today is going to focus on ways to implement or even just increase the amount of client choice food being offered at any size or any style of food pantry. So today in the Zoom room, we should have mostly or all food pantry programs and members of the food bank. So Feeding America recently did a 3-year-long study with the Morgan Stanley Foundation. They worked with over 100 food pantries to both define client choice in practice and create a shared language and best practices around it. So that study informed some of the ideas we'll be talking about today. And I made a copy of that study available to everyone in that resource packet. Then we're going to get into the why behind client choice, the benefits, and the opportunities associated with it. And then I do want to spend the majority of our time together today on the how. Ideas to implement more choice for your clients. For ideas, I am including in the PowerPoint here a mix of research from that Feeding America study, and then some anecdotal experiences at the Regional Food Bank, things that we've heard from within our network. I've also asked a special guest speaker, Brenda Blanks, the director of the Zion Community Food Pantry in Hudson, to come on and speak today as our client choice champion. She's going to talk more about her own experience adjusting to more client choice at her pantry. But we really want to hear from you guys today too, and have you hear from each other on this topic today. This is really meant to be a discussion-based workshop, and we want to hear from you guys with questions and comments, your actual experiences with this. So if you have something to say or a question, please use the chat box feature in Zoom, or raise your hand somehow try to identify yourself, and we will try to get to you and get you heard. And then, of course, we'll end with a wrap up and a discussion. Before we really get started, everyone should have received a resource packet this morning. So that includes 3 things. The first item is that study I just mentioned done by Feeding America. The second is some choice markers or labels specifically around HIPNAP standard choice minimums, which we will talk about as we go. And the last is a news article titled Quantifying the Benefits of Client Choice. I included this. All of this is really meant to give you some additional context and reference material for you and your volunteers, your board, whomever, just around the concept of more client choice at food pantries. So if you didn't receive that packet, please let me know afterward and we will get those materials over to you. All right, so as mentioned, before we talk about best practices, we are going to talk about definitions. So we are all kind of working from the same baseline. Now, no 2 food pantries are the same, but ultimately that's okay because client choice is less about your pantry setup or its space, and it's more about creating a mindset and operational processes that can create more choice situations for your neighbors or your clients, your guests. Because when we talk about client choice, really what we're talking about is personal autonomy for our neighbors, allowing them as much power and decision making over the food that they and their families are going to consume as possible. And of course, still within the limits of your pantry's resources. That's the central tension that you all navigate. But in the study by Feeding America, they make a point to say choice is not an either or situation. Either you offer choice or you don't. No, offering choice can be a mindset, and there are multiple ways to do it that can fit within the mold of any type of pantry, small, large, urban, rural, basement. Some of you are in closets, drive-throughs. Any type of pantry can adopt a client choice mindset by thinking about the ways to maximize the amount of choice their clients are offered. And I mentioned all types of food pantries because all types of food pantries are important and serve a critical function in their communities. The goal of this workshop today is not to diminish any one type of pantry or any one type of distribution model. The goal of today is to help you identify where your pantry is at right now and ways to keep evolving the assistance you're already providing, to think about ways to maximize the amount of choice you can offer in whatever capacity you can. There's a question, will the PowerPoint slides be available after today? Yes, I will make this all available to you after today. Thank you for the question. Plus we're recording the workshop, so there will be a recording. All right, so a mindset is great, but what is the tangible? What is that in practice? Again, one of the best ways for us to start talking about and share ideas around increasing client choice is to start with those shared definitions to give us all a baseline. So Feeding America's study identified 4 existing types of choice models at food pantries. And we said no 2 food pantries are totally alike, but generally all their distribution models do fall into one of these 4 broad buckets. We have no choice, limited choice, modified choice, and full choice. And I'll get into these more in a moment, but the takeaway here is that there is a spectrum of choice models that you can aim for depending on what's going to work for you, depending on what your pantry setup and resources look like. All right, here we go. As defined by Feeding America, here are the 4 broadly defined choice models. This is really less about rigid definitions and more about the spectrum of ideas. Your pantry can be a mix of styles, that's okay. And after this, after the definitions, we'll pull out a poll and we'll see where everyone thinks they're at currently. Okay, so the first is going to be no choice. So under no choice, neighbors are leaving with pre-packed bags or a box filled with food, not necessarily less variety or less quantity of food, but little to no choice of what the food is inside. These pantries may and usually do take special requests for dietary or allergen needs, but we wouldn't consider special requests like that to be choice necessarily. It's still, of course, a great thing to do. I don't want to diminish that, but that does require your neighbors to, disclose some additional information. Ultimately, in this model, all clients are getting basically the same thing, and neighbors never really touch the food inside the food pantry. Next, we have limited choice model. So here we still have pre-packed staples. Maybe it's some of the HIPNAP required items in the bag coupled with a choice of other items that make sense for your pantry. So limited choice is a combination of pre-packed coupled with some choice. Here, volunteers or your staff are still the ones touching the food for the most part. These 2 setups, no choice and limited choice, these can work well for certain situations. Maybe you even have some neighbors that prefer this. If you have regulars and you're able to anticipate their needs like that, that's great. We have no notes. You're serving those people in the way that they need to be served. But here you just want to think about how you can lean into and expand the limited choices that are being offered. So our third kind here is modified choice. So here's where the list format would come in, or the Dutch door window setup, or maybe you list things on a whiteboard. So here, clients are getting a menu or a list of what the pantry has in stock, or they are calling in their order and the choices available to them are communicated over the phone, along with hopefully the amount available to them, and they select what they'd like from there. This can be a great setup for pantries with limited space. Not everyone has the space right now to allow guests inside their pantry. And a list is still a really good way to allow your neighbors some power to have time to think and evaluate and plan what they'd like to get from your pantry. It's helpful to be specific on your list instead of saying, choice of one meat. It's better to list, choice of chicken breast, choice of whole chicken, pork loin, whatever. And of course, you want to have a plan around how that list stays updated. And then our fourth and last category here is full choice. So this is where the shopping model would fall into. Again, not necessarily more variety or more quantity of food. The main difference here is the full spectrum of your pantry's physical inventory is visible to guests when they are selecting, and they are able to handle the food. You don't have to be a full-on, mini grocery store here to offer full choice. Maybe you're using tables or rolling shelving or coolers with ice packs. On this last point here, I'm sorry, second to last point, amount owed per household clearly communicated. Obviously, item limits and quantities per household are going to be very important here. The quantity of something available to someone is an important part of choice. And later in the workshop, we'll discuss strategies around that kind of communication. So before we move on to the why, if we're imagining this as more of a spectrum and your pantry is closer to the no choice pre-packed model, your next move might be to think about moving to the second model, limited choice, or to a list model. Incremental change is how we start to incorporate more choice. So with all that, let's pull up our poll and see where everyone's at. Oops. Okay, there's our Zoom poll. So please answer the poll with which model your pantry is most closely currently aligned with. I did include a fifth option if you feel like maybe you don't fit into one. We definitely want to talk more about that. So we'll allow a few. Is everyone seeing the poll coming up in their Zoom window?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll allow maybe a minute or two for everyone to answer the poll. Yeah, so I'm hearing that the poll results are coming through, but for whatever reason, we are not able to see them as hosts. So I did want to talk about the poll results. So if we can find a way to communicate what the poll results are. Okay, so it looks like from our results, okay, so almost 46% of you are full choice shopping style. That's interesting. And then we have about 24% modified choice and 24% limited choice and 5% no choice or pre-packed. Nobody selected my pantry doesn't fit into any of these models. So that's good. I guess that's interesting. Does anybody that's doing, I guess, a limited choice or modified choice, do these definitions, I guess, kind of make sense with what you're doing? Does that align? Does Feeding America's definitions align with what you see? If anything, if anyone had anything glaring, please shout it out in the chat. Yes, these definitions are very helpful to clarify the options. I agree. I think when we say, client choice, that can be kind of an amalgamous term and nobody really knows what that means exactly. So I thought it was really helpful to include some, hard line definitions. So we're all kind of working from the same baseline here. But again, no pantry is different. And I know everyone works with what they have. So I didn't expect everyone to fit neatly in each box. If there's no more questions, so Olga said we are a modified choice, and yes, it aligns with what we do. We have a list, and clients have some choice of food items from a list, and they physically choose. Excellent. Thank you. So now that we have our definitions, let's move on. Moving on to our why section. Why is client choice important? Well, some of these whys are going to be self-evident, but I wanted to reinforce the reasons and get specific behind why offering client choice is important or its effects, because I think even some of the less tangible benefits are still so important. I picked the three biggest whys identified in the study, and they revolve around your neighbor's experience, your own pantry's operations, and then the volunteer staff experiences as well. And then after we go through these, I want to hear from you all on what you think. All right, so the biggest why to offer more choice, however you can, is because it just creates a more dignified experience at the pantry. Offering more choice reduces the stigma around receiving food assistance, and it changes the power dynamic between your pantry as the giver and your neighbor as just a receiver. So the argument here is that it can change your neighbor's perspective on using food pantries if they can choose food according to their dietary needs, cultural foods they're more familiar with and like to eat, and know how to cook that their kids will like, all while not having to disclose as much information. So that in turn makes them maybe more likely to use the resources available to them. Overall, it can just be a more positive experience. And then I did include a quote here from a pantry from the Feeding America study, speaking to that psychological benefit of offering more choice. There is no substitute for people choosing their own food because they're not thinking of it as a hand up, they're thinking of it as shopping. The second reason here, of course, along with that, the more choice people are getting around their food, the less likely it is that food will go to waste, the less likely it is you'll see it next to your dumpster or redonated to you a few weeks later. Not only that, you might even see your inventory stabilize and not be depleted as quickly. And Alex will touch on this a little later, but an important clarification if you're receiving the New York State HIPNAP grant is that your guests only need to be offered the choices on the 3-day pantry package guide. They do not necessarily have to take everything that is available to them. So if you are that 5% that is pre-packing bags around the HIPNAP guide, if you're doing any kind of pre-packing, think about how your inventory might be affected by letting folks pick and choose some of the items. Hopefully, allowing guests to be more discerning, make sure ordering and restocking processes a little bit simpler. You're going to know what's popular, you'll know what to keep in stock. And then here's a quote from a study quantifying the benefits of client choice included in that packet. By not wasting so much food, by not wasting so much on food that nobody wants, we can double down and spend resources more efficiently. So Heather had a question, just curious, how many families do the pantry serve weekly that do full client choice? That's a great question. Like I said, it's small pantries, it's large pantries. If anyone wants to shout out, if they're a full choice, how many families they're serving, that's helpful. Thank you. 1,800 a month from Stacy. Wow. Yeah, so I think the takeaway here is full choice pantries can serve a lot of people, a lot of families. My last here on the why. So a benefit reported in the study was a shift in volunteer resources. I think a reduction in workload probably depends on your setup, but certainly as you shift operations around doing more choice, opportunities could open up for new roles and tasks. It might not mean less time for your volunteers, but it could mean time spent doing different things, which could lead to more efficiencies. So this is where getting feedback and buy-in and talking to your team, your volunteers about choice, what it is and why it's important, and understanding what they're thinking is going to be really important. So I have an open question here. Please put this in the chat. I know there's more benefits to offering more client choice. What are some big ones that I didn't hit on that people have seen? What are other benefits to more client choice that we're not thinking of? They select items that suit their health needs. Exactly. That's a really important one because, as we were mentioning before, people don't always want to disclose their personal health information. And so the less they have to do that, the more dignified of an experience they're going to have. So Leslie has some questions about how volunteers are assisting neighbors and how they make sure they're getting the correct amount of food. So Leslie, we are going to get into that more in the how section. We did try to cover that, the different ways you can communicate like household sizes or household quantities available to people. We will try to get to that. So Barbara says it can offer opportunities for informational conversation. That's a great point, that it's going to help create opportunities to build relationships with your clients, to get to know them better, to have them get to know you better. Generally, it's just going to create a more positive experience where, again, they're going to feel more comfortable to come back to you. They may choose something new they haven't tried. Penny said that. Penny, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. It's an opportunity for people to try different kinds of foods. And I'm sure everyone has experienced getting something from the food bank that they might not have seen before. It's a good opportunity for people to try something new. And what's important about that is they've selected it. So they're kind of taking the onus on of discovering that food. Rosalind says able to offer ethnic and cultural food choices. That's really important. Again, to not have people, disclose information they might not be comfortable with. If they see a food that's just familiar to them, that's a warm feeling. That's the kind of environment we want to create. So thank you guys. I appreciate all that feedback. That's really important. All right. So we spent some time on the what and the why behind offering more client choice. We're going to spend probably the rest of the time of the workshop more around the how. So next, our nutritional resource manager here at the food bank, Alex Lamberton, is going to take over and walk through some HipNap basics. So the idea here to connect HipNap with client choice is to try to marry some of these competing priorities for you guys. And maybe your pantry has some of this figured out, in which case, please do speak up during this.
All right, everyone. I hope everyone's doing great. Happy Tuesday. The weather is becoming warmer. Hopefully we all enjoy that, right? Because we're all sick of wintertime, but I digress. All right, so here is the HipNap food guide. I'm sure you guys have all seen this many times. You probably have it hanging up. If not, you should probably hang it up. I'm not going to go too in depth with this. It's not going to be like a what's in a bag workshop. But I'll dive into it a little bit, and any questions you guys have, you can ask. So when I receive this HipNap screening form, I'm measuring what is being given out based on a family of 4. So this is measured in choices. Choices are a unit of measurement that balances package size, serving size, variety, as well as my plate recommendations. So this would equate to 10 choices for fruits and vegetables, 10 choices for protein, and 5 choices for grains. So again, this is for a family of 4, and you probably gave me one of these screening forms before, so this should be familiar to you. So the takeaway is to clearly communicate the quantities available to each household size, because it can make things simpler. So a free table with a take as much as you want mentality would not be considered HipNap compliant. In fact, that model can even discourage people from taking full advantage of what's available to them. There's a few ways to communicate to clients or guests about what's owed to them in a 3-day pantry package. Some pantries have signs or markers. Some just talk to their clients. Some pre-pack a bag that they know they're meeting the guidelines. So we want to take a poll now to see what everyone is doing to stay HipNap compliant and offering choice, if any at all. So Jess will launch that now, and we'll see what you guys are doing here. Give you guys a few minutes like last time, and take your time and answer the best you can. Yeah, so again, you may have more than one of these choices. That's totally fine. And at the end, we'll be able to kind of like have an open-end discussion about it. I'm actually curious to hear what you guys are doing because obviously I'm not there. So I, get some insight for my own well-being as well. So I'm excited for that. All right, guys, we're going to close the polls now. Hopefully we can share the results for everyone. All right, so it looks like, it's pretty equal here, actually. So signage listing quantities available to guests, about 30%, no client choice, about 5%. And that's totally okay, by the way. Verbally communicating quantities available to guests, that's 30% as well. And mix of pre-packed compliant bags and some choice is also 30%. And then other is 5%. So, if you have anything that we, didn't touch upon, you're more than welcome to share that with us. I want it to be open-ended, but it seems like a pretty split across the board, everyone kind of doing a little bit of everything that works for them and their program.
There's a question about pantry soft. Is it in system?
All right. We are going to move on, and again, if I didn't cover anything, we can cover it in a little bit. We'll have some time at the end to have like an open-ended discussion. All right. So as you can see, this beautiful picture I took with my own camera. Look at these photography skills. I'm very impressed with myself. I'm just kidding. So just because something doesn't count towards the HipNap pantry package, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be part of your distribution. Make sure you're thinking about ways to create a whole meal. Some examples here are the maple syrup and the butter, condiments with meat, things like that. Although it doesn't fit into any of the three categories, so fruits, vegetables, protein, and then grains, it can be used to make meals with. So we do advocate for that, and it should be included. So again, syrup with your pancakes, butter with your mashed potatoes. The main word here is meals, not just food. So extras like these are a great way to increase choice. So we always advocate for these items. So, and there's a lot of items too that HipNap will allow funding for, but they don't count towards the food pantry package. Some other examples I mentioned, the syrup and the butter, but you have, cooking oils, syrup, sugar, condiments, spices, crackers, jelly, things like this. HipNap will fund, but they do not count, which is not a bad thing. Because again, we are making meals, not just individual items. All right, so Penny asks, I do struggle a little with this sheet. Individual gets 3 choices in protein. A jar of peanut butter is 3 choices. That means the only protein they could get instead of meat choices. Okay, so the eggs come in a dozen. So according to the chart, 6 eggs are 1 choice. Yes, so yes, the 6 eggs are considered 1 choice. We don't have, I guess, on the guide, it's not all inclusive, I should say. There are some non-meat options. There's not a ton though, just because we have like a protein requirement, and that's like a little bit in depth, but essentially we go by the 7 grams of protein for 4 servings. And we dive into that a lot in the What's in a Bag workshop, but that's kind of the minimum that we abide by. So there's not that many non-meat protein sources that I guess fall into that category. Peanut butter is one of them. But I guess peanuts and almonds would have high enough protein where we'd count those as well. So I hope that answered your question. I know it's really confusing, honestly. Yeah, and Carrie can elaborate on it too a little bit. All right. All right. So as a food source, the regional food bank is meant to be supplemental to your inventory. So as many of you know, our inventory is variable and it fluctuates quite a bit. So it's always encouraged to find other sources of food to bolster your ability to offer choice. So if inventory is your main concern with offering more choice, feel free to reach out to us about our retail store donation program or just-in-time delivery for fresh fruits and vegetables. We can see if you qualify for that, as that can add more inventory for you. Another way to add inventory is, of course, local food drives, donation bins in grocery stores. And then you have your sampling. So giving out samples to your guests can provide insight to unfamiliar foods and help get rid of those, hard to move items in inventory. You see it at like Sam's Club and stuff all the time. It's a very similar concept. So if you're moving away from pre-packed bags and want a different task for your volunteers to try, this could be a good one. And I always advocate for sampling. It's something that I think a lot of people should be implementing because, there's a lot of foods that people have never tried before and you have picky eaters. So we always advocate for that. And again, say, for example, a family is used to eating white rice, right? And they know for a fact that their kids are going to eat that white rice, but you have brown rice, which is a healthier option, but it's kind of hard to move, right? So we want to, give out samples and, have the kids try it if they bring their kids in, or have the mother try it, or the parents in general. Just have them try the food, see if they like it, and then, maybe they'll grab it. So all things to advocate for. So, and of course, signage. So we just talked about this, but physical signs are an easy way to take the guesswork out of choice work, so to speak. And if guidelines aren't clear, if what people are owed is not made clear, it could make people a little shy. They might not want to seem too greedy. But if what they are owed is communicated to them up front, directly, that could make them more comfortable to take that amount of food. It can also reduce potential conflicts with everyone when everyone understands the method to the madness. So the methodology that goes into your distribution. The household guidelines need to be communicated somehow, either visually or verbally. So in your resource packet, we are including household size markers that can be put out for display. If you're providing more than the minimum choices, that's great too. Just adjust the markers to what makes sense for your pantry. And I'll give it back to Jessica here. And again, if you have any extra questions on, the food guide or whatever, you're more than welcome to give me a phone call or email me. Oh, we do have one more question. So it says, Jennifer says, our pantry is run by volunteers and 2 staff oversee the 8 volunteers that help pantry guests. Some of our volunteers get stuck in the weeds of the number of items per person versus the meals. So thank you for sharing the whole picture of what we should offer. We took a picture of your picture to share with our volunteers. Condiments and other things not counted, but help complete the meal. So yes, thank you. I do appreciate that for sure. And hopefully we can, give some insight onto some things. So here's Jessica, everyone.
Thanks, Alex. And thank you everybody for the comments. I want to go back to was Shamika mentioning the pantry soft and just the general question about having an intake software. We do recommend having a pantry intake software. And I think that does tie into client choice in that that's going to free up time for your volunteers to do other maybe choice-based activities. So if you're thinking about a pantry intake software, please do let us know. If you're a member of the Food Pantries Coalition in Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, or Saratoga County, they do have a software, an intake software called Oasis Insights. If you're not In the coalition, the food bank also offers one called Service Insights. And then I know Shamika was mentioning one called Pantry Soft. I'm not as familiar with Pantry Soft, but yeah, I think the general takeaway is an intake software is going to help streamline things for you so you can focus on more of the choice-based activities. And as for the poll results, I think a lot of people said they're communicating choices verbally and visually. That is excellent. That is what we recommend. Leave little to no doubt what is owed, what people are owed. Do it visually, do it verbally. I know some pantries even they kind of reconfigure the choice sheet in a way that makes sense for them and their volunteers that's still compliant with the HIPNAP guidelines. You know, think about doing something like that if that makes sense for you. And of course, like Alex mentioned, we are always here as a resource to help you navigate and translate that HIPNAP compliance guidelines. All right, so we are going to move along here. So we're going to talk about obstacles. The 3-year Feeding America study that we've been talking about, they took a poll from their pantries on perceived obstacles before moving to more choice. So before I put those results of this other poll up, I want to take a poll of this group to see what our own obstacles are first. So let's get that poll put up. This is, what is your pantry's biggest obstacle to including more choice? And if there's an obstacle that I didn't list, please let me know. An obstacle that you're affected by, I should say. So we'll give maybe another minute. Jody's got no obstacles. Okay, I love that. Another obstacle would be the amount of people coming through weekly. Heather, yes, that is certainly an obstacle we are seeing more of. We'll touch on that in a minute. I'm curious what everyone's doing around that particular obstacle. Rosalind, I see your question. I'm going to ask Carrie if she can answer that about the distribution limits.
Yeah, so Raz, that's a great question. First time somebody comes to see you, you have to serve them regardless of whether or not they fall within your geographical catchment area. They present whatever paperwork you may require. And you have to serve them the full 3-day
Language
pantry
barriers
package.
for sure. Yes.
In addition, every
All
time
right, we have about 64% of responses in. I'll wait maybe another 30 seconds and then we're going to close the poll. Okay, we're going to close the poll and give me a minute. to pull up the results here. All right, so with the majority of the vote here, 57% inadequate space or equipment. Then we had access to food, cost, variety, consistency. Third was not enough volunteers or staff, followed by it would be less efficient for my pantry. And then unsure about staff volunteer agreement and unsure if my clients would prefer this. All right, well, thank you everybody for taking that poll. So here were the results from the Feeding America study, and they mirror what we said a little bit. So the top response was not having enough volunteers and staff. We saw that. There was a high percentage that responded to belief that it was more efficient to prepare bags in advance. Not as many of you responded with that. And then, of course, the space and time constraints are a big factor. And I think it was Danny that mentioned language barriers. Yes, that was a common obstacle reported in the study. I do want to point out the efficiency idea. So the most reported barrier to full choice, offering full choice, was the desire for efficiency. And then we had the second highest poll result, a belief that it was more efficient to prepare bags in advance. So the study found that pre-packing bags is not necessarily more efficient. It might be convenient, and it might even be convenient for a lot of your guests. But as the study went on, the idea that it's more efficient was kind of dispelled. Pre-packed bags might not necessarily be saving the pantry any time that the volunteers couldn't be used to do other more choice-based tasks, was the takeaway. So I want everyone to think about how their pantry is defining efficiency and who it's most efficient for, I guess. So let's talk about, we talked about the obstacles. Let's talk about working through some of those obstacles. Your pantry setup and your space kind of impact what style you are. And I know a lot of you are working out of really tight spaces and basements or temporary shared spaces even. There's still some things to consider about your distribution and storage setup. So signage and layout, again, making it clear and obvious where to go with the flow of traffic. Inside the pantry, of course, the visibility and placement of food is an important part of choice. Seeing all the choices available to people, that's an important part of choice. Putting items that you might have a lot of that you want to go first, putting those up front and center. So here's where volunteers can come in with additional restocking tasks. Again, clearly communicating household size and quantities, letting people know what and how much is available to them is allowing for more choice. And then this came up a bit in our obstacles. Stagger entry to avoid crowding, do an appointment system, or somehow group your clients. I know this is a big topic right now with everybody's traffic going up. So this is where communication and setting expectations with guests is going to be really important. And I think Mary Jo mentioned they're having an issue with traffic in the parking lot. So what have people done around this, I guess, to kind of spread out traffic during pantry distribution? Because I think that is an important part of the client choice pantry experience, and that does have an impact on people when they're going to pantry. If there's a lot of other people there, if it seems like there's a lot of crowding, maybe they get the impression that there's not going to be enough food. I want to kind of crowdsource the solution to this because this is becoming more and more of an issue. So one of the solutions Jennifer mentioned is pre-pack. Of course, yeah, I think that we saw a lot of that grow during COVID, where an effort to quell crowds and avoid that kind of gathering, the solution was to pre-pack bags. And now, of course, we're trying to think of ways to move away from that. That's certainly a tension that we're having to navigate and figure out a way to have the best of both worlds, I guess. How does an emergency staggered entry system work with emergency food packages? If a family is displaced and needs food that day, but there is no appointment spot, how do we get them food? That's a great question. And I guess I would lean on your own operations. That's where, talking to your volunteers ahead of time and letting them know, okay, this situation occurs, how do we want to be prepared for it? A lot of food pantries, will take emergency calls. There'll be kind of an on-call type of situation, but again, that really depends on volunteer agreement. If you have people willing to do that. So Rachel, I guess I would trust you to come up with the solution based on your own resources and based on your own setup. What's going to work for you guys? Penny says, I'm not sure where this question would go, but an obstacle we have is bagging up their food. Do you let folks bring their own bags, but are concerned with the possibility of bugs? And yeah. So certainly we'll get into this in a minute, but the food bank does carry bags. So if you need a supply of paper, I think it's paper bags we have in our inventory here. And then I do want to mention reusable bags are covered by the New York State HIPNAP operations grant. That is something you can apply to be reimbursed for. I know reusable bags go fast. That's a good question, Penny. Thank you. So Mary Jo mentions a referral process for emergencies and prepare a box for their arrival. That's a great point. Like I said, like Mary Jo said, planning ahead for that situation, should it occur, it might occur. So have a plan and process for those emergency calls. Have a volunteer, that might be able to make themselves available, or different volunteers. Okay, Deanna's saying, I have noticed when we have drive ups versus call ahead. There's a line, we have noted a panic that we will be short on food. How do we coach volunteers to reassure them effectively and not feed their anxieties? Yeah, again, I think it's all about communication. It is all about telling people, we are required to serve, or it's a tricky question. I think being communicative about how much food you have, reassuring them that there is food available for everyone, you are able to plan in advance for how many people you're going to serve. How many people you can serve. Maybe you have to cut off the line at X number of families based on what you have in inventory, but be upfront about that. Don't let that anxiety stew. Don't let people sit there and wonder. I hear the term scarcity mindset going around. I don't like that term because I think it puts the blame back on the people that just want food. And I think scarcity mindset it comes from the source. So that's something that we, as a source of food, and this goes for the food bank too, it's the onus is on us to avoid putting people in that mindset. So I think the best thing to do is just to be upfront and communicative about how much food you have, the system you have in place to make sure that everybody's getting it distribution equally, to make sure that everyone's getting shared or served equally. Be communicative. Margaret says we have people bring their own bags, which is the norm in grocery stores. That's a good point. Ask people to bring their own bags. Tell them, if you don't bring your own bag, that's something that the food pantry has to buy. Is there conflict resolution training available for volunteers to help neighbors with their challenges? Jennifer, I don't think we have anything like that, but I would love to talk more about what that looks like, what kind of challenges you're seeing and where you think your volunteers would need help or need coaching. Rosalind says, has anyone come up with a system to communicate in Spanish? We use Google Translate. Yeah, Roz, I think you were here for our meeting with Michael, but what a lot of programs have done is they've partnered with schools. And we're lucky in the capital region, we have the Albany International Center where there's students that speak all kinds of languages, not just Spanish. Jennifer says reaching out to a retired Spanish teacher. Yeah, I think you need to kind of lean on the community for that kind of help. If you have a volunteer, bringing in volunteers that are bilingual or speak multiple languages. Stacy, we will touch more on the chat or on the grant for reusable bags. Because I'm gonna move on in a second here. This is really good feedback though. I appreciate this brainstorming. All right, operationally, here are some ideas for implementing more choice at your pantry. Again, this isn't a change that necessarily needs to happen overnight, right? Consider mixing styles based on what's going to work from you. Incremental change. If your pantry is no choice, consider just moving to limited choice. Incremental change is going to be really important for building that buy-in from your neighbors and volunteers, giving them that experience in smaller doses so that they know what they're signing up for when we talk about choice. Setting clear expectations for your guests around choice numbers, around behavior expectations. This is what we were mentioning a few minutes ago. So this is where you can reduce potential issues if everyone is aware of the ground rules going into it. It also gives you ground rules to remove someone who is not following those rules. So all pantries should have their bills of rights posted so that volunteers know what the expectations are, your guests know what the expectations are. And if that way, if something happens, you have the grounds to take action on it. Let's see, SNAP referrals. I'm sure most of you are doing this, but if you do not have a process to inform or refer neighbors for SNAP or WIC enrollment or information, please talk to us about how to create one. Because SNAP and WIC benefits really are the ultimate choice for folks going to the grocery store, and that can help alleviate some of the traffic into your food pantries. And then last, please make inventory suggestions to us. I think one of the highest poll numbers on obstacles was about our inventory. If we're asking you guys to offer more choice, we have to offer you more to choose from. So here is our inventory form on our website to make an inventory suggestion. So if you get feedback and that you pass that feedback to us. It could even be preferred brands, preferred sizes, get specific. We do have an in-house procurement team at the regional food bank, and they are able to receive suggestions. Do any of my other full choice or other choices or pantries that they're offering full choice have any other suggestions around this? Let's see, what did Rachel say? Is there any way to make suggestions to update, add things to the HipNap choice chart? Oh, Rachel, there will be changes potentially to the HipNap choice chart. That's a You know what? I'll let Carrie answer that. We'll let Alex answer that. No, right, to answer your question, Rachel, no, there's no formal mechanism, but certainly we do want feedback on that. You guys are the ones having to actually implement and execute that requirement. So if you have suggestions, yes, please let Alex know.
Jessica, can you hear me?
Sarah's mentioning having signage in Spanish and English. Yes, that is a very important part of client choice and a dignified experience at the pantry. Being able to communicate to the extent that you can with all guests, even people whose, like English is not their primary language, you still want to make them feel welcome and make them feel invited in your pantry. So yes, having signage in other languages is very important. I know a lot of programs do use a language translator, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Google Translate would work. If you need help with that, let us know. Yeah, I think Google Translate is available to anybody, everyone. Yes, excellent point from Barbara. People might not always be literate, so if you really, the ideal solution is to have a person who speaks other languages in your volunteering at the pantry. I know that's not always easy to come by. But thank you for that. Jennifer saying we partner with local agencies and have materials available to sign up for additional resources, HEAP, SNAPWIC. Yes, exactly. If you have a community action program, and well, I think most communities do. If you have a community action program, definitely network with them, build a relationship with them. They can help with those other social services need that often walk into pantries that you guys aren't always equipped to deal with. So yes, and that's largely what we do at the regional food bank. We have a referral process for SNAP and WIC. We want to make sure that we're connecting those people with the resources that they need. Right, I'm going to move along. Thank you, everybody. All right, so let's talk about that grant we were mentioning. Here are a list of equipment ideas around offering more choice. I know people who run food pantries and volunteer in food pantries are already some of the most resourceful people on this earth that I've ever met. So I just want to talk about ways we can make our pantries and our equipment work for us and work for our goal of offering more choice. So if you need more equipment to offer more choice, these are all items that are covered by the New York State HIPNAP Operations Support Grant. So obviously, folding tables are the simplest way to display a lot of food, especially if you're in a temporary or shared space, or if you have to break down your setup after each distribution. Refrigeration, freezers, especially clear gas coolers. And up here, I have a picture of a pantry. They tape their household limit signs right to the glass cooler next to whatever the item is. Clear glass coolers are a great food safe way to let clients see what's available. Same with open top commercial coolers, this little picture down here. Those go a long way with offering more choice. Reusable bags, we've been talking about bags. I know those tend to go fast, but I just want to remind everybody those can be paid for by New York State Operations Support Grant. Insulated and thermal blankets. That's this. So where I see these used is in conjunction with folding tables at pantries that have that temporary distribution setup that are not climate controlled, so outdoors mostly, outdoor distributions. Insulated blankets are another great food safe way to protect food from those temperature fluctuations. Shopping carts or wagons, these are a great way to help your guests collect their food while shopping. I have seen pantries acquire shopping carts as donations from the big box stores directly when they're closing, so it never hurts to ask, but those are coverable by the grant. Wire shelving including rolling shelving. So the rolling shelves, especially if the room you distribute in is separate from your main secure storage area, think about getting some rolling shelving. It can be rolled back and forth in and out for distribution. And I actually stole this idea from a pantry inside of an old school. They had most of their storage inside of classrooms, but they didn't have enough room for people to actually come inside. So on pantry day, what they did is they rolled their shelving outside into the hallways of the school, and folks walked up and down and selected that way. It was a very resourceful, kind of a mini mobile pantry. And again, all of this equipment is eligible for the New York State Operations Support Grant. If you're not taking advantage of the HIPNAP Operations Support Grant, please reach out to me or Catherine Dorby, who we can throw her email in the chat. After the workshop, we can discuss the qualifications further. You do have to be qualified as an emergency feeding program. It is similar, but a little bit more in depth than the food grant. And I think Sarah Harrington mentioned shopping carts are on Facebook Marketplace for cheap. Thank you, Sarah. That is a great point. Rosalind asked, do we have to wait for the next grant period to get reimbursement since the grant apps were due earlier this month? Rosalind, that question is out of my purview. I will have Catherine get back to you on the timing. If you have a specific question, we'll have her reach out about that. Guys, did I miss any equipment? Is anyone using anything that's not covered on here? Scales for weighing food. I don't know if those are covered by the grant, Tammy, but that's a good thought. I'm assuming you use scales to weigh the food when you receive it from a store to report it to us. Scales is a good one. Oh, looks like Rondi could offer a scale. Thank you, Rondi. Yes, the OS grant can be used for other non-equipment things, including staff salaries, transportation. I tried to keep this equipment specific, but yes, the operations support grant is a pretty broad grant, and there is a limit on the amount you can apply for, and that limit is, I think it's $3,000. But certainly something to think about. All right, let's move on. So we know finding reliable volunteers is a pain point. That was one of our top responses in the poll. So at the Regional Food Bank, we are very blessed with a robust volunteer base. I spoke to our director of volunteer services about that for recruitment and retainment best practices, and I wanted to share some of those with you all. So her first tip was really to be open-minded when seeking help. I think we think sometimes of volunteers as maybe only coming from our own parish or people retire from their full-time jobs. But if you get creative, there's other workforces out there untapped. Young people, students can be a worthwhile workforces. They can lift those boxes. A lot of colleges do offer credits for volunteer work. So we were talking about language access earlier. They can get college credit for coming to your pantry and helping you out. So there can be an incentive for them to show up and do a good job. So I encourage you, if you have a college close to you, to look into that. And I know, well, students can sometimes be more seasonal, but they can complement those snowbirds. People with disabilities too, they can be a tremendous asset. And if you are working with a day or a residential program, they typically have support staff that accompany them, and their support staff, knows what their needs are and they know how to help them be successful. Recruiting online. So the beauty of the internet is its reach. Posting on Facebook that you need volunteers, having an application, or even just a blurb about what volunteering at your pantry looks like. What the hours are, what the tasks are, be specific. That can really help people make the decision to reach out and help out if they know what to expect. And a website that we actually use at the food bank, it's called volunteermatch.com or .org, I'm sorry. So this is a totally free service. It's a website where you essentially register your program with the website, and then when people who are looking for volunteer opportunities search in a specific location, your program comes up as an opportunity in that location. So that shows up on Google. You can set it up so like you receive an email anytime someone says or someone finds your program on the website. And again, that's totally free. Tying the mission to the task. So by this, we mean it helps to be specific about what kind of help you need and why you need it. So let's say you're serving a rural area or you have a lot of people that are homebound. Make sure that's front and center when you're trying to find volunteers that might be willing to deliver. Make it close to home for them. Tell them what the need is. Oh, geez. Sorry, everybody. This is my first day on a computer. Okay. Volunteer acknowledgement. So, volunteers typically don't like to be thanked, but acknowledging objective things like length of service, number of times volunteered, those are small ways to make people feel appreciated. And then another great way to say thank you is to promote within. So I know it's easier to find people for those more entry-level volunteer positions, but if you have someone that's volunteering or showing aptitude, passion, or even just some curiosity, emphasize to them that they can have a greater role at the pantry. Ask them what they might be interested in. Go from there. Has anyone had success finding volunteers any other way, or what are some other tips to find volunteers? You guys are the experts. Well, so Leslie says having a board member speak at the local Rotary. Yes, leverage that network. Lean on other resources in your community. Student Community Service Needed for National Honor Society. Exactly. Margaret's using her town's website. Excellent. Some from the community of clients we serve. So I think what Barbara's saying is people that come to the pantry who are being served by the pantry and then want to volunteer, that's okay. You can have your clients volunteer at the food pantry. An important clarification there is though they can't be receiving any kind of special treatment for volunteering, right? They can't give any kind of incentive, I should say, to be volunteering at the pantry, but that is allowable as long as you are making that very clear. Thank you, Barbara. Jimmy said the same thing. That's okay. These are all really good ideas. Thank you, everybody. All right. So next, I want to introduce our client choice champion. So that is going to be Brenda Blanks is on the line. She's in the Zoom room, and I'll have her unmute herself in a minute. So Brenda is the director of the Zion Community Food Pantry in Hudson. She has been the director there for over 20 years. Her pantry serves, well, I think, over 1,000 individuals every month down in Hudson. They have been a member of ours since 2001. I asked Brenda to join us and speak today because we were really impressed with just the sheer dedication she and her team has around offering a lot of client choice. She had just like an inherent appreciation of why this is important. So we're going to treat this as kind of a Q&A interview style with Brenda. And then I want to open it up to the forum for anyone on the call to ask Brenda any questions they have, and we'll do that via the chat. So let's try to get Brenda unmuted here. And let me make sure I can hear her.
Okay,
Brenda, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Thank you, Dina.
Hi, Brenda. Yes, I hear you.
Okay, great.
Okay. So thank you for being here. Can you hear me
Thank
okay?
you for having me. Yes, I can hear you as well.
We are having some technical difficulties. So Brenda.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So thank you for being here. So let's start with the pantry itself. So the Zion Community Food Pantry shares a space within the City of Hudson Housing Authority, but it's not part of the Hudson Housing Authority, and it is open to the public. So you and your volunteers must do some moving around and rearranging of things to set up for Pantry Day, specifically around offering more choice. So can you just describe your Pantry Day distribution setup a little bit to give everyone an idea of the space you're working with?
Okay, the space that we're working with is, as you said, with the HHA. But we do have our own space now. We were in the community room and we had to move everything out back to the storage rooms. So now we don't have a storage room. So everything is, all the supplies are set up where we set up for client choice. And it's better than it was at one point when we had to move everything out and then bring everything back in. So now we're able to leave everything in the pantry area.
Yeah, and I have some pictures pulled up here for the folks to see what your setup kind of looks like. You use a lot of tables. So what factors, I guess, help lead you to the decision to incorporate more client choice during pantry?
Well, prior to COVID, we did have client choice. But once COVID hit, we started packing bags. And we found that once we started packing bags, we saw that the clients, they were sharing the food outside. One could use this and the other one couldn't use that. And at some point, after about a year, we did go back to client choice. And it made things much easier. And people were able to choose what they wanted. They would go, and just like at a grocery store, well, I don't need this, my kids won't eat that. So we found it better for us, with the client choice.
So were you, I guess, surprised by anything when you guys moved back to choice?
Well, when the clients came in, the majority of them, they were very happy. And we got an overwhelming response. They were saying, I like this so much better. And they weren't forced to take food that they really didn't want by, receiving a packed bag.
That's great. So what about your volunteers? How do your volunteers feel about offering more choice?
Oh, they were very happy because it's much easier for us. The bags were so heavy. By the time you put everything in it, a number of items, they were really very hard to pick up to give to the volunteers because we didn't have, during COVID, we didn't have the volunteers to come into the pantry. We would take the bags to the door and give them to the recipients, and they were too heavy for a lot of the elderly people that were coming in as well.
Okay, so you think it's easier for your volunteers to do
It's much easier for the
choice.
volunteers, and it's also much easier for the recipients because they're not forced to take everything. They take, it's just like shopping at a grocery store, and I think it gives them dignity, and it shows, I believe, that we respect them to make the proper choices for them and their families.
That's great. So I know you said, it's a much more positive experience. Is there any
Mhm.
specific feedback you've gotten from clients that you want to share? Anything specifically they told you?
Well, one of the things they told us, even though we're giving them the proper amount of food, they would like more household items, more cleaning products, that type of thing too goes as well. If you're going shopping, you're going to buy your tissue, you're going to buy detergent, bleach, cleaning supplies. And we're trying to incorporate more cleaning supplies into the client choice.
Excellent. So they gave you feedback about what they'd like to see
Yes,
and you were
yes,
able
they
to
did.
provide
Yeah,
that to them.
yes.
That's great. So were there any kind of, I guess we have all food pantries on the line here. So were there any new protocols or procedures that had to be put in place that helped after you made the switch to choice?
Well, not really, because prior to COVID, uh, a lot of the recipients or clients, they were accustomed to us setting up for client choice. So it was easy to go back from the bags to client choice. So we didn't have any issues of whatever. We followed basically the same procedures that we were following prior to COVID.
Okay. So would you have any other, I guess, technical advice for pantries thinking about adding more choice to their distribution?
Well, I would say rotate your stock because, say, if we're open on a Friday and then we're open on Tuesday, we don't want to. We try not to give out the same food that we, you know, had distributed on a Friday. And I would also, you know, we seek donations from the local grocery store. In fact, they reached out to us, and so what they do for us, and it gives us more variety. They have a bag sitting by the register, and it costs $5, and they announce it continuously over the loudspeaker system. So we've done pretty well with that. And we have a food drive to have a variety. We do that twice a year, November and in the spring of the year. And that's sponsored by the local radio station.
Oh, that's great.
It works out
So
well.
Brenda, we did have a question in the chat. I think Leslie wants to know how the amounts are communicated to your guests because she doesn't see any signs in the pictures.
Oh, so what we do when the guests come in, if we have about 6 families, they have 5 or 6 kids, and they get more than we would give to someone with only one person. And normally we tell someone, well, you can get 2 cans of this if you're one person. If you're a family of 6, you can get 4 cans of a product to make sure that they have enough to set up a meal. And we try to do oatmeal, and we do the shelf milk, and we do the syrup and the pancakes. And I think all of that was set out on this particular day. And if we open again on a Friday, we would try and switch basically all of this, the food that you're seeing.
So it sounds like you're maybe training or coaching the volunteers on what the limits are.
Yes, we are. We have to, because we don't, I would love I had a vision of having a grocery store and people coming in and going to the shelves and getting what you want, but we don't have the finances to do that. But they do choose, because some people come in, they only take a few items. Some people will come in and they'll take everything that's on the table, but I let them know it's your choice. You don't have to take everything just because you see it here. You're welcome to it, but you don't have to take everything.
That's great. And it sounds like it's a great opportunity for conversation and getting to know people.
Oh, we know them
Um,
well. We
I
get to
do.
talk
So
I'm
was there any
sorry.
more questions that anybody had for Brenda? I mean, Brenda does a phenomenal job down at Zion, talking to her folks, offering choice, creating that positive experience. If there's any more questions from her, I can read them and we can have Brenda give her thoughts. Oh, so Heather wants to know, Brenda, how many times a month you allow a family to come to visit?
Well, we normally, they can come when we're open. We're open the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, and we're open the first and third Fridays of the month. But we are open on the third Tuesday, but that's for the elderly and disabled. And that's where I think we have to do a better job there, because we do pack bags for that third Tuesday to deliver to the disabled and the elderly.
Okay, so
But
that's interesting. So you want to think about ways you can offer more choice to
yes,
I know you
uh,
said you home deliver to, I
yes,
think you're near a senior housing complex, right?
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And they
And we
don't
know,
get as much
we,
choice. Okay.
right. And we know a lot of people, they don't eat pork anymore. And we have a lot of the Muslim population that comes in. We do have Hispanics and Africans. They don't tend to eat a lot of pork either. So we try to adjust for those people,
Okay, so they
for
give you
that
feedback
population
maybe
at
that they
least.
don't want that. And so you know your clients, you know
Yes, pretty
what
well.
they're gonna
Yes,
want. Okay.
yes.
Let me see what else we have, other questions we have. Oh, so Rosalind says, it sounds like you don't limit the number of times a family can visit.
No, no, we don't.
So do you put a limit on how often somebody can?
No, we don't put a limit on it.
Oh, okay. So no limit.
Now, at one
Oh,
point,
so
you
Jody has a comment. She says
okay, Joe.
they do some delivery.
Hmm.
For their delivery, they make a phone call and clients will kind of make a choice over the phone to see what the pantry has available and what they're able to order. That's a good system, Jody.
That
Thank
is a good system. It sounds good. Maybe we can take some pointers from Jody. But what we normally do, we have a sign up sheet at the senior citizens complex, and there is a line if they don't want certain things. Some people don't want a lot of snacks or sweets or whatever because of health conditions, and we do oblige those that state on that sheet not to pack them snacks or sweets or pork or whatever.
Awesome. So it sounds like you are a mix of all the different styles depending on what's going to work best for that situation.
Well, yes,
Brenda, we did have a question. We did have a question in the chat. Somebody wants to know how you're doing the cooler foods, because I see you have coolers in the back. How are the
we
cooler foods? Yes.
we take the cooler. We open at 5:30, so we take the cooler foods out around 5:20, 5:15, and so the coolers are right there. If we run out, we run right to the coolers because the coolers are right there, and we don't take a lot out at one time, so it's not out of the freezers for long. Now the fruit and stuff, we do sit that out earlier because we figure, they take it all. We never have any left.
That's great. So yeah, so Jody or Leslie, I'm sorry. It sounds like they're just putting cooler and frozen stuff out on the tables and restock
Yes,
it as needed.
yes.
Thank you. Um, any other questions for Brenda? This has been great. Thank you guys. Well, Brenda, I think that's it. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing the amazing work that the Zion Community Food Pantries is doing. This is really great. And thank you for coming on and sharing.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully it was helpful, but it appears that we have a lot of people uh, involved in client choice, then maybe we can all help each other out with suggestions or whatever.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Actually, Brenda, if you do have time for one more question.
Sure.
Let's see. So Jennifer wants to know, do you have any food delivered to you or are you picking up from a separate location?
We pick up from ShopRite from the local grocery store. That's the delivery site for the mass. We sponsor the mass as well, and we pick up from ShopRite in Hudson. That's the
Yeah, so,
delivery site for the food bank.
Jennifer, in Hudson, New York, the regional food bank delivers to a parking lot right next to a ShopRite. And then it sounds like Brenda's doing some shopping afterwards. Oh, so we have one more question. Jimmy wants to know, do you have, or how are you handling food safety training?
Well, we'll do in October. So, and we all attended the last one. So we'll do this one probably on Zoom. We attended in person the last time we were scheduled to be there.
Thank you. That's a great plug. Yes, Jimmy, you can have yourself or all of your volunteers can attend our food safety workshops. We do host those once a month, about once a month. They're a 3-hour virtual webinar. Alex, who you heard from earlier, actually hosts them. And then we will be doing an in-person food safety. We will be doing one this summer in June,
Okay.
June 27th.
Well, we may attend in person because I had 6 staff attend the last time, 6 volunteers, plus a couple of board members. And it was very informative. I think it's important that more than one person attend the training.
Yes, thank you. That is a great point. The more people that have this knowledge base, the better, the easier it will make your job if people are trained themselves. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it. So let's move on to our wrap up. So thank you again, Brenda.
You're very welcome.
I just want to start the next virtual food safety training. When is the next virtual food safety training?
May 13th.
May 13th, Tammy. The next one is on May 13th. You can sign up on our website. So I want to start our wrap up here first, just by saying thank you to everyone on this call for their work every day. Both Alex and I have the incredible privilege of our jobs being to work with food pantries and all the people who run them. And it is always inspirational to see the ways in which you are all going so above and beyond and just care about the people who you serve. So thank you. I hope you found something relevant and workable in today's workshop. And thank you to everyone who contributed many ideas and questions and comments. So for our final discussion, I do want to kick it off with a prompt around the regional food bank. So we will launch a Zoom poll right now. And I want to know, how can the regional food bank help your food pantry to offer more choice? What can we do? And I only included, well, no, I did include an other column. So if there's something that I didn't have listed here, please pop it into the chat. Thank you, guys. Rosalind, we see your question. We will get back to you on that. So we'll leave a few more minutes for the poll, or a few more, maybe 30 more seconds. You see answers trickling in. All right, a couple more seconds and then we're gonna end the poll. All right, we're ending the poll. I'm gonna take a look at the results here. Jimmy said there's been more cultural items available. Yeah, Jimmy, that was a specific initiative we took on to include more of that inventory, but really we need your guys' help with that. If there's things that you're hearing that you need, again, that inventory suggestion form, please let us know what we need to be carrying. All right, so our poll, let's see here. Over half, 53% said better variety and or consistency of inventory. 37% said specialized grant opportunities around adding client choice. And 10% said assistance with volunteers, training, or recruitment. So thank you. That is very valuable feedback. We are looking for feedback on how to, you've heard a lot of verbiage from the food bank saying we want to expand capacity. This is a way that we expand capacity by, helping you guys create the pantry experience that you guys want to create. Just pull this up. As far as our inventory, like I said, like I was telling Jimmy, we are trying to make improvements both on cost and variety of inventory and on consistency, trying to be a consistent source of certain things. So like I was saying, we cannot do that without feedback from you guys. Please do not be shy. I know most of you are not shy, but please do not be shy about giving feedback to us about our inventory and what you want to see. Specialized grant opportunities. I mean, we talked about the operation support grant, so that's going to help you with capital assistance. But if there's other things, we are trying to come up with, capacity building kind of grants. So we will likely be looking for more feedback around that, like what specifically you need help with. And then assistance with volunteers or training. So myself, our agency services team, and Alex, we are available to come to your site and do workshops and training with the volunteers around the choice numbers, what they mean, how to translate those to be meaningful for your guests and be helpful on pantry day. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us about coming for a visit. Let me take a look at the questions here. All right, guys. Well, unless there's any more questions or anything we didn't cover, this is what we had today for client choice. I just want to emphasize it's a really important initiative. It can completely change the pantry experience, not just for you, but for everybody. So Jimmy mentions the availability of dry milk. Yes, I think dry packaged milk is something we've heard a lot about. It's something we're looking into. I know that helps with storage space and that kind of thing. So stay tuned on the dry milk. I appreciate you guys. We couldn't do it without you. All right, guys, I'll stay on a few minutes, but that's the end of the workshop. Feel free to drop off. Yes, shelf-stable milk in addition to steward's cards. Those are both non-perishable ways to get milk to people. If you're not getting milk cards, please ask us about milk cards. We can get milk cards. They are available for free to emergency feeding programs through the grant. Thank you, guys. When will the recording be available? Great question. Hopefully today, if not possibly tomorrow, Margaret. I will work on, yes, I did promise the slide deck in recording. So I will clean up the slide deck and mail that out to people, and we will get the recording posted for everybody. And thank you. Shout out to Brenda Blanks. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
So there's a question about egg cards from Stewart's. As far as I know, that's something you can buy from Stewart's. Yes. You have to purchase them yourself. So Jimmy's saying you can get them for free once a year. So we do give out free milk cards. I'm not sure. Are you getting free egg cards? Jimmy's saying he's getting free
Stewards
egg-
may donate them, may choose to donate them separately from the food bank.
Oh, so Carrie's saying you can ask Stewart's to donate them. That would be separate from the food bank. But yes, that is another excellent choice to offer. Thank you. My college pantry regularly sees emergency cases. How can we qualify for grants? So Melissa or Michelle, I'm sorry. Right now, being a college pantry, you are considered a closed food pantry. So you don't qualify as an emergency feeding program. Right now, most of our grants are tailored towards those emergency feeding programs that are open to the public. That's what that means. I'm not sure what college pantry you're at. My first piece of advice would be to seek grants locally. New Paltz. Okay. I'll jot that down. Like I said, I would seek grants locally. As far as the food bank, I don't think we have anything right now, but certainly that's something we would want to consider when we talk about, expanding capacity. That's a good point. Thank you for pointing that out, Michelle. So Roz is saying Stewart's donated to their weekend backpack program, both milk and eggs. I'm assuming that egg cards, right, Roz? Yes. Stewart's is very generous. They make a lot of donations and they're everywhere.
Almost everywhere.
Almost everywhere. All right, guys, if there's no more questions or feedback, we're gonna end the Zoom. Thank you, Roz. So Michelle, Jimmy wants to troubleshoot for you. He mentions talk to the food service director at SUNY New Paltz. Yeah, unfortunately, the food bank, I don't think is well equipped right now for grants for your type of program. So I would recommend leveraging some local community resources, including the school. You know, if you're seeing emergency cases, that's something I would want to record and flag to the administration that that's happening and see how they can help fund that problem. Jimmy, thank you for all your feedback today. All right, I'm gonna end the Zoom. Again, thank you everybody for joining and for all your work.